changes, or there were restructuring of various institutions of government. For example, the creation of the 3 roads authorities, which again I participated in as an expert. We were 2 consultants who worked on that process.
This is Kenya National Highways Authority, Kenya Urban Roads Authority,
and the Kenya Rural Roads Authority. Of course, it is, I would call it a unique institutional arrangement that is not similar in many countries in Africa. And the reason why we did structure them that way was that we wanted specific attention to be given to national highways without being overridden by the rural roads. And on coming to rural roads, which actually support agricultural production, we again needed to provide for a proper development and maintenance program for rural roads. And many a times before that time, urban roads used to suffer a lot, because whenever there was a hue and cry, about roads in the rural areas and the national highways, then the urban roads were left more or less orphaned. So that's why we also set up the Kenya Urban Roads Authority, so that we have a dedicated attention. So the policy paper, the National Integrated Transport Policy that was done, therefore, did appreciate that we needed to integrate the national economy using infrastructure. And we equally appreciated that many parts of the country were actually lacking in highways. Look at what we were before. Just the Mombasa Road, going all the way to the border with Uganda, Tanzania, and then beyond that we have enclaves going into Mount Kenya region, and that's all. And so it meant that a huge part of this country was actually lacking in infrastructure. Close to 70% of the country needed to be opened up. And there was actually a chapter that was talking about opening up the second transport corridor that now became the Lapsset corridor. The
Lapsset corridor.
So, and there were also a number of studies that were undertaken. For example, the expressway that is now being built. Sometimes I see people making comments not knowing that the government had already set in motion plans to put up this. It did not just drop from the sky. In fact, it ought to have been completed by the year 2012 if the World Bank did not
and by then it was called the Nairobi Viaduct.
It was called the Nairobi Viaduct. And I remember we went on mission to Washington to have discussions with the World Bank, because at that time it was supposed to be constructed by SBI and Strabag AC. And but at that time, the World Bank advised that that contract needed to be stopped because they were the financiers. So this time around, then the government has found now another avenue how to put it up, and it's much needed. The bypasses, again, like the southern bypass was part of that project. But when the World Bank stopped the project, because they were the ones to fund it, because they had issues with the, what we call
the contractor.
With the contractor. The government therefore found it fit to quickly put up the southern bypass without waiting for it to be done. Otherwise, maybe it's now when we could have been doing the southern bypass as we are doing the...
And the southern bypass, the whole region was to try and divert traffic that was on its way to Nakuru, Naivasha and all that, to divert it outside the city center.
Correct.
Because the whole place was becoming clogged up.
Absolutely. And also, if you are, let's say you are coming from a place like Kikuyu, or you're coming from Karen or any other place, you don't have to come into town for you to get your way to the airport. Or you don't have to go all the way to Nyayo Stadium for you to start diverting towards the airport. You just need to get a route out straight away. So that is what these bypasses have been doing. And actually these bypasses were planned all the way back in 1970s, early 70s. And even land was acquired then, yes, for the bypasses. But it did take quite a long time to deliver them. But now
until 2015, 2014 thereabouts.
Yes.
The document that you are talking about, the National Integrated, the National Transport Integrated Master Plan in of 2003-2004.
Yes.
It also talked about, the expansion of various roads, highways, airports, and ports.
Correct.
And one of the key projects that was supposed to be undertaken was the expansion of Jomo Kenyatta International Airport.
Correct.
To increase capacity to about 12 million. million. Currently, we are talking about 8 million. And one of the projects that was supposed to be undertaken was the Greenfield Terminal.
Correct.
We know that project has been put on hold because of various reasons. I want to hear from you. So when such projects, have been put on hold, how is it likely to impact that critical document?
What I would like to say is that definitely putting it on hold does not mean that it will never be built. And actually, if you draw lines in comparing with what Ethiopia is doing, they came up
at Bola International Airport.
Yes, International Airport. And they came up with a whole new terminal. And it has really boosted business in Ethiopia.
It's almost actually snatching the pie from Nairobi.
Yes, and actually you've also seen this week we saw that Ethiopian Airlines is actually almost among the top 20 airlines
in the world.
Yeah, in terms of passenger capacity. Yeah. And it has beaten even many other known airlines. Yes, and so basically that terminal was supposed to increase capacity and also create greater, opportunity for us to expand our airline business.
And also stamp JKIA as a regional aviation hub in Africa.
Correct. And it was also dealing with a number of other issues, particularly looking at matters that go with the separation of incoming passengers and outgoing passengers. And of course that meant that a lot of rejigging had to be done on the existing terminal. But of course we can also avoid to appreciate that there is the terminal that was built with the support of the World Bank. This is the Terminal 1.
The Terminal A.
Yeah. So that capacity again did bring in a new value to the airport. Yes.
Kasuku, I know you're well traveled. And I know you have landed in some of the best airports in the world. Right. And I want to give you, an example of, for example, take, Cape Town International Airport in South Africa. Take, for example, the Cairo International Airport in Egypt. Quite modern, when you look at them. And these are the airports that Jomo Kenyatta International Airport was supposed to compete, or is supposed to compete with. When you even go closer here to Ethiopia, Bola International Airport, a whole new terminal. The Kigali International Airport, a whole new terminal. Quite new and modern, and encompassing green aspects in modern day infrastructure. Is it proper to say that JKIA is somehow lagging behind in catching up with the latest technology and, of course, trying to compete with these emerging aviation hubs?
In fact, I would even want to increase the number of examples. If you go to South Korea and you look at the Incheon International Airport, that's a whole new hub. If you go to Dubai, they have that new, the Dubai.
Those are extremes, actually. You're comparing extremes. I mean,
if you go to countries like even Iran, they have the Khamenei,
Ayatollah Khamenei,
International Airport, and among many others. And what is happening is that people, governments or the aviation sector is taking new shapes, and every part of the globe is trying to create a new hubbing effect, taking advantage of new technologies, even in terms of even just lighting, even in terms of taking care of issues of security, creating new value and comfort and services in airports. I wouldn't say that we are lagging so much behind because we have that new small, Terminal 1A. At least it has brought in some new value. If you go in there, it is much better than what did, what burnt down. But we do expect that the right decisions will be made, or some decisions will be made going forward on how to create a new, a new sensation, a new hubbing effect, and new services, and therefore attract even new businesses that also go with the current airport configurations. Because actually an airport is also a hub of business, and you find a lot of people also doing a lot of other businesses at the airport. Yes.
If we delay so much, or we take too much time in developing JKIA as an aviation hub, not only for the region but for Africa, what is likely to happen to the aviation industry in Kenya and in the region?
Definitely, as we've rightly said, that there is a lot of competition that is coming up. Actually, everything that is being driven at the moment, whether you look at what Ethiopia is developing, what Rwanda is developing, it is actually creating that competitiveness in the developments that they are doing. Because, you know, business is not just the preserve of one specific country, but other countries also want to bite the same pie that you are also having, and that is why they are putting up those kind of infrastructures and services. So what we can say is that we actually need to move to that next level. Yes.
It is proper to say that these new airports that have been developed in Africa, and there are many actually, they have somehow grabbed the shine of JKIA. How do we regain our status as a regional aviation giant, not only on the eastern seaboard of Africa, but in the east, central, and of course somehow southern part of Africa?
Definitely that also goes with the growth of the airline services. We need maybe to revamp our KQ brand, because if you look at what Ethiopia is doing, definitely they have gone into strengthening the competitiveness of their airline. So because it's not just the airport alone that will bring in the business, or that will attract the hubbing effect, or will strengthen the hubbing effect. It is, they are concomitant, the airport infrastructure and the airline services. So we have therefore to strengthen our connectivity to many parts of the continent and other parts of the world. And if you look at like what Dubai does, I mean what Emirates does, Emirates takes you to Dubai whenever you want to go to any part of the world.
Yeah.
Let's say you want to go to the US, they have first of all take you to Dubai. And then from there, you connect now to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And it is that kind of creating the hub effect. And that's also what Ethiopian airlines are also doing. You've seen, they take you whenever, even if you are leaving South Africa and you want to go to any other part of the world, they first of all take you to Addis Ababa. From Addis Ababa, they now disperse.
Yes, true.
And when you are coming back, you come back into that hub again, and then again you get your services out.
I want to take you back to around 10 years ago, 10, 8, 9 years ago. Anybody who was landing at JKIA, the airline that dominated the ground was KQ.
Correct.
Anybody who is landing at Bola International Airport, majority of the aircraft that you see are Ethiopian Airlines.
Yes.
You go to London Airport, the majority of the aircraft that you see on the ground are British Airways.
Correct.
The same with LaGuardia Airport. You see a lot of American Airlines, Delta and so much. But these days, when you are landing at JKIA, this is no longer the case. How do we, I know there are a lot of efforts behind the scenes being done to revamp and to help our national carrier Kenya Airways, you know, to get on its feet and compete with other emerging carriers. But how do we accelerate this progress? Because time is not on our side.
Absolutely. Time is not on our side, and the business cake doesn't wait. In fact, when it's on the table, each and every country comes with its own knife. Yeah, you are not the one who divide for them. So it therefore means that we must now move to get our acts together and make sure that even though business is now being shared by many other countries, you've seen Rwanda now having their airline, Tanzania is
which is growing very fast,
growing very fast.
Yeah.
And Tanzania is also revamping its airline industry, and you've seen that they are actually also now trying to use that same hubbing effect. You've seen Uganda has been growing, and actually a lot of passengers, maybe a number of passengers maybe who used to pass through Nairobi now fly directly to Entebbe. Ethiopia, the same.
And actually Entebbe is also under construction.
Yeah, it's under construction.
It is being expanded.
Yes. And the same is happening to Ethiopia, among many others. So what we have to do is that we must continue to strengthen our competitive edge by making sure that we put in place the right infrastructure. At the same time, we strengthen our service provision, the airline service, and make sure that we continue to strengthen our network and competitiveness within the continent and around the world.
Look, all the major airports in the world, they have next to them a conventional center that can host thousands of delegates for meetings.
Correct.
They have hotels. I know there was a plan back in the 2008, 2009, to establish an international convention center next to Jomo Kenyatta International Airport that was supposed to have various amenities. We all know the controversy that surrounded that whole project, and it was stopped. But other countries have not stopped. Look, Kigali has just completed the construction of Kigali International Convention Center, which is actually taking a lot of MICE meetings to Rwanda. Bola International Airport is also having a brand new state-of-the-art convention center and hotels. So is Cape Town International Airport. So is Johannesburg International Airport. So is Cairo International Airport. The only airport that is missing out is JKIA. How do we accelerate our development of aviation sector in this country?
Yes, in fact, the configuration that we are having in Nairobi is actually interesting and needs to be looked at differently, because we have like the KICC, which is actually a convention center somehow, and then supported by the hotels in town and being put up in different parts of this town. And you will actually recall that the number of hotels have actually gone up very much. And that's why we need to take advantage of the unique situation that we are having. Because actually, conferencing is indeed also a kind of business generator. And when you integrate it with the city, with the city structure, then you end up maybe creating a sense of value and allowing that conference tourism to bring in new business into the town. So what we have to do therefore is that, for example, now we are having the expressway. You remember coming from JKIA, sometimes you could even take 3 hours in a jam there. I mean, if you are a visitor and you're coming to town, and then you end up spending 3 hours, which is more or less somebody leaving Dubai and coming here.
It's 5 hours.
5 hours. So you spend a better part of that journey in the jam, So we need, therefore, to strengthen our accessibility capabilities in the city, so that we can create an integrated framework of conferencing and city business, so that even the people who come to for conferences also partake in improving our business environment within the city. They do shopping, they enjoy themselves in restaurants. I mean, they have quite a wide variety to enjoy from. And they also interact with the people. That's part of what actually conferencing also brings out. And you can see people who usually come to Kenya, they go back remembering some few things. Nyama choma. You go to Carnival and you have serious nyama choma. You come into the city and you are taken to Nairobi National Park. The city with a national park within its boundaries.
The only one in the world.
The only one in the world. I mean, these are unique, and competitive niches that we need to catch some kind of business from. Or we need to develop business around them. So actually, sometimes just having a convention center outside the city, or let's say at the airport, might not even just be the only thing of how to attract conferencing business. But we need to find out how to intertwine our unique form, our unique structure, our unique services, and our unique environment with the with the conferencing business, and we can actually develop it much stronger because we have many hotels that are now being brought up, and it is that movement, let's say, between the conference center and to the hotels, that also creates the business in movement, in moving people, and that also creates value in traveling for a conference. Look at Santon
in Johannesburg.
The International Convention Center that has been built there is actually the one that is driving the Santon business environment. And whenever there are conferences taking place there, all the hotels within Santon are actually highly booked.
And Greater Johannesburg.
Yeah, and Greater Johannesburg. And the fact that it is slightly outside the main Joburg, because it was created as a new business hub, it is actually one of the major conferencing centers in Joburg. And actually it is the heartbeat of conferencing in Joburg. And it has become like a city on its own.
It's a city within a city.
Yeah, it's a city within a city. And that is also driving business. So you see, it's not like next to the airport or something like that. But it's a city within a city, but strongly pegged on conferencing.
And with a very efficient railway transport system.
Correct.
In the name of Gautrain.
Yes, Gautrain, yes. And that is why I'm saying our JKIA can be there. We can even have another green terminal, whether at JKIA or we take it towards Konza City, so that the movement, once movement is efficient, once accessibility is high, people don't mind how long they travel. I mean, how long the distance is between the airport and the conferencing facility. Look at Incheon International Airport.
In South Korea.
Yeah, in South Korea. It's over 120 kilometers away from Seoul. But Seoul is the soul of conferencing. When I say Seoul, I don't know whether I should say it. But Seoul is indeed the soul of conferencing. But Incheon International Airport has created a new value, new capacities, new businesses. And you can also find that Incheon itself is a special economic zone. There are industrial parks, there are business parks, office parks, name it. There are residential hubs. And that has also created a city next to a city or within a city framework. Seoul and Incheon. And that has created great impetus for South Korea.
You see, what has always baffled me is that, as a country, we do not lack expertise in terms of, developing this kind of master plans, in terms of infrastructural development. And you're giving a very good example. Let me take, my first time to land at Incheon International Airport, I was blown off. The level of infrastructure development, you're talking about underground trains.
Correct.
You're talking about expressways that takes you less than 30 minutes to get to Seoul City Center. You're also talking about you can also use a ship.
Correct.
That will take you all the way to Seoul. How comes we have not seen for all this time, and we have done a lot of benchmarking missions, to some of these countries? How comes we have not seen it fit as well to develop another city outside Nairobi, maybe Naivasha, maybe Machakos, maybe Thika, so that we try to decongest the city of Nairobi? Because sincerely speaking and honestly speaking, the city of Nairobi is full to the brim.
What I can say is that you see the framework of development in Kenya is a lot led by private sector, business tastes. If I can draw a parallel with Malaysia, the Malaysian government, other than having their usual headquarters, they decided to put up Putrajaya as a new city, and Putrajaya has been made the seat of government. And by being the seat of government, business has also followed. But it is the government of Malaysia that has actually built Putrajaya. And then private sector has followed. We can say that in Kenya, and particularly around Nairobi, we can say that we've seen the private sector actually driving the agenda of putting up the kind of cities or sub-cities that you are talking about. We've seen Tatu City, we've seen, I think there is Northlands. There are many other sub-cities that are being put up.
Konza City.
Now that's now government-driven. And maybe we need to find out, and not even just finding out, because we know maybe why private sector might be slow in getting there. But as a government, we need to find out, just like to keep ourselves away from COVID, we just get a vaccine. The vaccine is very little, but it actually aids the entire big body to survive. So we need to find out which development vaccine do we need to inject around Konza, other than just the office, other than just offering land. There are some things that we now need to start to open our eyes to start to put up around Konza. Number one, we have a beautiful standard gauge railway. Then we have something like, let's say, the Railway Logistics Center. Maybe we could have moved it to Konza, because there's enough space there. It's bigger than the Wienerland container terminal that we have here. So that
are you talking about the railway city that is planned in next to the to the railway station?
Yeah, the railway city, or let's say just the logistics center. Let's say if instead of let's say squeezing the inland container depot where it is, we could have, let's say, built up a bigger one that can handle more business, let's say around Konza City. From there, then we can do the Greater Southern bypass that now goes through, that doesn't come into town, that goes through on the other side of the national park, goes through places around Rongai, and connects, with the road going to Nakuru and beyond at a different stage. That could have also enabled us to start to inject some value there. And of course, the SGR passes near there. So that could be one idea. Another thing is the Greenfield terminal could have been taken there.
Sylvester, allow me to step on your shoes, because we want to take a short break. We are coming back with option number 2, and of course there are also some questions around option number 1.
Yes.
Hold your thoughts. We're having a great discussion here around how to develop infrastructural projects here in Kenya, and of course how to accelerate the rate at which we are developing this project. This is This Check live from Broadcasting House. O'Brien Kimani is my name. We're taking a short break, and thereafter we are back with more. Stay right here. Great.
We need...
Welcome back. You're watching Channel 1, and of course our discussion is around infrastructure, and we are tracking the progress of various infrastructural projects. Talk about airports, ports, highways, and many other things. And we are doing this with the help of Sylvester Kasuku, the immediate former CEO of LAPSET, and of course a former infrastructure secretary in the office of the Prime Minister. He's also an infrastructure and transport expert. And so you would imagine that he comes with a very serious technical know-how on some of these issues. Before we went for the break, we were discussing option number 2 on how to help revive Jomo Kenyatta International Airport to bring in more business, and of course to make Nairobi the aviation hub of Africa. And you are giving us option number 2.
Yes, definitely. We were relating this with some of the projects like the Konza City, and saying that maybe we need to have certain strategic investments around it for it to start to pick up very quickly. And you know the comfort that a lot of investors find, particularly within the city center. Let's say you are talking about stretches of Upper Hill, Westlands, among many others, including the CBD. And a lot of investments are already here, and a lot of government services are already here. So you find that if you therefore want to create some impetus in creating business or activities around that particular city investment, then you need to take some of the services there or around there. Like, let's say, the railway logistics center. You need to take maybe, if you're building a new terminal, instead of squeezing it around somewhere, maybe you can create a new international hub there again that enables you, therefore, to do much bigger business there. So once you start having, let's say, people landing there, people doing logistics business there, then it starts to attract other investors now to come on board, so that they don't look like they are doing double investments within, or double location within Nairobi City.
You're talking about Konza, which is also another major project that is supposed to relieve a little bit of pressure from Nairobi, and of course create a new tech hub around there.
Correct.
Since the construction of these cities started back in the year 2009, when you go down there, are you convinced, and when you look at the progress that he has made so far, are you convinced that we are making progress at the right speed and in the right direction?
O'Brien, there are things that determine speed and direction. Number one is the resources required to put up the necessary basic infrastructure. Therefore, if you hadn't allocated enough resources for it, then definitely, if without roads, who will go and invest there if there are no roads? So it means that we have to complete putting up the required infrastructure for people now to get in. So I believe that is what is going on. Not I believe, I've seen, that's what is going on. And definitely, once the infrastructure is put up, then you start having, you start finding those interested parties starting to go there. And once you also create certain value investments around it, that are spearheaded by government, that create a ripple effect for the other investments now to be done by private sector, then you find that that will attract the development going forward. Just like, I mean, you were among the first journalists that came to interview me in Lamu when we were at the beginning of starting the construction of Lamu Port. And that time it was just the sea and the bushes there, and you are asking me, so where is the port going to be? And I was explaining, pointing somewhere inside the water. Today,
in a forest.
Yeah. And today you can see that a port has been built in a place that was previously just water and bushes. And ships are now calling, they're starting. And the business is starting to gel. A lot of people in investors, service providers in the shipping business are already locating there. That starts to create, the impetus for business to grow. The infrastructures are being built. For example, roads connecting the port into the hinterland, and those that are connecting to other countries. And this is actually now starting to create a new investment climate, a new investment interest. And I believe you know very well that Lamu is no longer the Lamu you used to know when you first visited.
I mean, it's
bustling with business. Even Lamu Island is bustling with business. People are rushing there to get space to put up a number of business premises. And you can find that the environment is becoming much more interesting.
We must appreciate this fact that, as a country, there's a lot of, competing interests when it comes to resources. Because, Kenya, as it were, I mean, we are not aware of a nation whereby, we have resources to do different things and multiple things at the same time. But you've brought in the issue of LAPSSET. Lamu Port, it's evident, it has managed to change the landscape of this area for the better. But I want us to talk about Lapset for a minute. Some of the projects also that have been completed include the construction of Isiolo Airport, but it's dead. What happened?
I think you haven't looked at it appropriately. One of the things that has affected aviation sector is mainly, particularly from last year, is the COVID issue. When movement became difficult, particularly by air or across borders, it has actually decreased, the volumes of business for the airline industry, and it has not even resumed properly. You've seen that people are not moving as much as they used to move. Now, a lot of things are being done using the platforms or online platforms. Even conferences are being done online. And you remember that even in terms of TV interviews, there's even a time now you are just interviewing people from home. Yeah, because movement became a problem.
To some extent, your point is valid, but it is an international airport. An international airport is supposed to serve the international market. Even before COVID, we've never had an international airline landing at Isiolo Airport. Even as we speak, we are yet to have airlines flying from Nairobi to Isiolo.
Yeah, they were doing so, and actually
flying from Mombasa.
I wouldn't want to speak on behalf of the state because I think they can answer you best on that now. But what I know is that they hadn't completed some of the developments they were doing. I know that Kenya Airports Authority is actually undertaking a process to put in some of the required infrastructures, even in terms of runway length and the like. It has the international status, yes, but you need to also complete putting up some of the required infrastructure, and that's what they're doing. And I think maybe they can explain that much better than I've said, but I've given you a glimpse of it, that they are still at the stage of developing.
That is not fully developed.
Yeah, so
it is a work in progress.
Yeah, it's work in progress. They need to complete that.
But Kasuku, you can't run away from this, because remember, Isiolo International Airport is a baby product of a Lapset.
Yes, you will equally recall, O'Brien, you visited Lamu quite a number of times. As we were building the port, before ships could get enough space now to come and actually call the port properly, we were still doing construction works. Even, let's say, like even when berth number 1 became almost ready, but there are certain infrastructural works that needed to be completed now for ships to come, and now they are coming. The same way, Isiolo Airport will take
it will take shape.
Yeah, it will take shape. And you've seen that the road coming from Lamu going towards Isiolo is under construction. Yeah. The section between Lamu and Garissa is now under construction at a very high speed. And once those connectivities are done, and I did say that infrastructure connectivity is very key with regard to enhancing the service provision levels. So that will change quite a lot.
With time.
With the time.
Let's talk about SGR. Quite a mega project. The business between Nairobi and Mombasa makes a lot of economic sense as we stand now. The whole plan was to push SGR from the port of Mombasa all the way to Uganda and to Democratic Republic of Congo. Right now we are stuck at Naivasha. Do you think SGR is having its intended impact?
Brian, what I can say is that when the railway was built by the Mzungu, or by the colonial masters, or the colonial government, people in Britain called it the Lunatic Express. They were saying that that was a railway to nowhere, a railway to do nothing. I mean, O'Brien, the railway did demonstrate its fair contribution to the regional economy. And you've seen that development basically followed the railway line. And a lot of developments that have been done in Kenya are actually along the main transportation route from Mombasa, going all the way to the borders with our neighbors. So what has been done for the SGR so far, in my view, is fair. Because if you look at how SGR has transformed movement of people and goods between Mombasa and Nairobi, you wouldn't really doubt it. And globally, a lot of times it is said that railway on its own account shouldn't be counted as a business without looking at its contribution to the growth of the economy. It is the services that it provides to the economy that brings in the value of the infrastructure that is built. And again, looking at the efficiencies that this railway has already contributed, particularly between Mombasa and Nairobi, I mean, we can't doubt it. And this is something that should also be looked at in view of what the African continent is having as its development agenda going forward.
The Agenda 63.
Yeah, the AU Agenda 2063. One of the key principles is to integrate Africa. And in integrating Africa, there are key projects that must be undertaken. Number one, construction of railways. It is saying that the African continent requires to construct 32,000 kilometers of new railway by the year 2040. It needs to construct 37,000 kilometers of new roads by the year 2040. It needs to do electric power transmission. It needs to construct new ports to create a new added port capacity within the continent of 1.3 billion tons per year.
So 1.3 billion tons.
1.3 billion tons added capacity to existing ports in Africa. So when sometimes we are seen to be propagating the construction of the big push infrastructure, then people say, why are we constructing these big things? What are they going to bring?
They don't see the bigger picture.
The big picture is that infrastructure is not counted as a business unto its own self, but it is an injection into the economy, like a vaccine.
It is an enabler.
It is an enabler. Just like the vaccine enables you to build immunity, infrastructure enables you to now generate business, to do business more efficiently. And one of the greatest impediments to Africa's growth is actually the lack of integration infrastructure. If you want to go to DRC, let's say you want to go to the headquarters of DRC today, or you want to go to Central African Republic, and you have a car, you'll just find that you can't go. So what we need to do is that we must build this infrastructure that are integrating the continent. And the more we build this infrastructure, the more we open up new business areas, the more we create new investments, the more we create new opportunities. Like if you look at the value of that the Kenyan private sector brings into the economy, if we just continue in Africa the way we are without building this new integrating infrastructure, we end up stifling the potential of greater growth. But if, let's say, you can build roads and railways that traverse Africa, that enables you to move from Kenya and go, let's say, to West Africa by rail or by road, I mean, that is when now you create new value of investment.
And Sylvester, I mean, the whole point of investing in infrastructure is to have a ripple effect around investment.
Correct.
Is to enable investment in far-flung areas.
Correct.
Is to allow for investors to reach different counties in this country. We know Nairobi and Mombasa have been the manufacturing, the business and the investment hubs for Kenya for the longest time. Now with all these infrastructural developments, from railways to new roads to airports, how comes the counties are yet to fly with these projects and initiate investment projects in their counties?
I can say that we are aware that most of these investments that are being undertaken now, some of them have just completed, let's say, their first phase of development, like if you count Lamu Port. A lot of roads that are, let's say, within northern Kenya, let's say if you talk about the ones that run along the Lapsset corridor, you see that they are under construction. Talking about SGR, we can see that SGR was just completed recently, and further infrastructural development to enable us to create a more interconnected network and a more efficient network are still ongoing. So we wouldn't say really that the county governments have not picked up. And you can see, take an example of Mombasa. You've seen that there are a lot of infrastructural developments that are being undertaken around Mombasa, including the Dungukundu, bypass, the road,
Mombasa Gate.
Mombasa Gate. I mean, mention it. All these are actually starting to bring in new perspectives in investments. And I believe that going forward, once, let's say, the key infrastructures that are being built in Mombasa are completed, and now they are functioning efficiently, you will see a lot of changes. And what I can also say is that just look at some of the areas where the government put up infrastructure. For example, when Thika Road was put up, have you seen the massive investments that have been done by private sector on the Thika Road corridor? The new estates that came up, because now people can move on a road that has greater capacity.
Yep.
Look at what has happened when Langata Road was expanded up to Bomas. The developments that have been done beyond Langata Road, talk about Ongata Rongai, talk about Kiserian, talk about among many other far-flung areas. Once you increase accessibility, then the private sector jumps in to take advantage of that. Look at what is taking place in Naivasha. People are now talking about Naivasha, the Vasha story. I mean, people are now trying to create elements of value and other business investments around Naivasha. And look at Nakuru, now moving into a city status, and at the same time having a shot in the arm in terms of infrastructural development.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't expect it to remain the same. Look at Kisumu. The other day, the government took the Madaraka Day celebrations to Kisumu.
Yes.
And you saw the social media calling Kisumu Europe, because because of some of the magnificent infrastructures that have been developed there that now came to the fore, that were now being seen. People were shooting photos and transmitting, saying, look, this is Kisumu. I mean, we didn't expect to find this in Kisumu. So the investments that have been done are actually starting to create new impetus in terms of development, either by the private sector and also the county governments.
Yeah.
What governments usually actually do, or what they should do best, because government is not one of the best institutions for doing business, like let's say like constructing shops or running malls. That's the work of private sector. But the government does provide services that are core to facilitating private sector to undertake these investments. Like
security.
Yeah, it's like security, like hospitals, electric power transmission, making sure water is available, making sure that roads are in good shape, and you are able to, if you are talking about the agricultural sector and how it intertwines with the cities, we need to find that we should enable the outlying agricultural land to be serviced by necessary access roads, and so that you can have appropriate farm inputs.
Yeah.
You can have appropriate movement of produce from the farms to the consumer gates or to the consumer outlets, and to factories, and goods being moved from factories to markets far and beyond.
Sylvester, because I have to let you go in the interest of time.
Correct.
As a country, how then do we take advantage of all investment that we have put in infrastructure to develop our economy, to expand our businesses, and to open new frontiers?
O'Brien, definitely infrastructure being the enabler that we look up to globally is already happening in the country. What we need to do definitely is to create greater facilitation to private sector to continue to generate more investments.
Yep.
And the government to continue to invest in areas that facilitate the economy to grow. I know that there's the issue that has been talked quite a lot about in terms of joblessness.
Yep.
We have quite a lot of people who are jobless, and particularly now with the COVID issue, many people have lost jobs. And people are doing what you usually hear people saying that, my hustle, I'm hustling. So what we need to do as an economy is there to start to create value for these people who are doing small-scale businesses. For example, go to Ngong Road. How many people are perched on roadsides? Go to Jogo Road. The road reserve is fully taken over by Kenyans, and you can't blame them because they are trying to do something. But that is something that is also telling us something about what we need to do. We are seeing that there is some capacity in the local person, in the common man and woman. They are able to do something. What we need to do is to precisely put them in frameworks that allow them to grow.
Yep.
Because we need to industrialize, because that's where we need to be going. Some of these things that the common man and the common woman is doing is actually directing us to start to see that they can actually contribute greatly to our industrialization agenda. I believe that a lot of times, most of these furnitures are imported, isn't it? A lot of times, if you go to good offices, most of the things are imported. But we have, not that we don't have capacity in the economy.
Yes.
For us to produce locally. I mean, we have Congo Forest here supplying us with all the best hardwoods
in the world.
We have many other forests around. We can even continue to create our own timber, yards within the country that can give us all the necessary materials for furnishings. Construction materials shouldn't really be imported.
Yep.
When we are talking about jobless youth, when we are talking about having technical institutions that produce fundis, I mean, we should turn this thing around.
And it's
in my view, it is ripe to turn it around.
This country has the capacity and the ability to become
absolutely
a first world country.
We have no reason to doubt ourselves. We don't even need to do any benchmarking anywhere. Technology is nowadays off shelf. I mean, infrastructure is being built. Some of the reasons why it is said that Africa never industrialized over the last 3 industrial revolutions is because Africa lacked human capacity, technical capacity, that Africa lacked technology, that Africa lacked infrastructure. I mean, we are now building all the infrastructure we need. We actually
have the 3.
Yeah, we have them. And for industrialization to occur, it must ride on infrastructure, it must ride on human capital, it must ride on technology. And technology is now off shelf. It's a global phenomena. And we need to seize the moment. And the masses, if you look at even what India is doing at the moment, India has about 65 million micro and small scale companies.
Yep.
And which drives about 80% of employment. In Kenya, we have about 7 million, people in the SME sector, in the MSME, and India is saying that they want to increase the share of the MSME sector from 30% to 40% in under 10 years.
Yep.
So that the economy can grow, because they've realized that is where the people are, that's where the employment is. In fact, MSME sector is the greatest generator of employment. And even in Kenya, our share of MSME in the economy, the GDP, is 40%. but it employs close to 90%
of the entire workforce.
Yes, of the entire workforce. So it therefore means that why do we still look around wondering where to employ our people? We already know where our strength is. We already know where the capacities are. We already know where the materials are. We already know what we need to produce. We already know what we are consuming in the economy, and far and beyond. Let's take it on.
And we can.
And we can.
Very well. Sylvester, thank you very much for finding time to be with us this morning, and of course sharing your insight with us on BizCheck.
Thank you.
Asante sana.
Cheers. Now there's no greetings.
No. I've been talking to Sylvester Kasuku. He's the immediate CEO of Lapset, as well as former in Transport and Infrastructure Secretary at the Office of the Prime Minister. And our discussion this morning has been around infrastructure and how to take advantage of the expanding infrastructure, how to accelerate infrastructural development in this country. O'Brien Kimani is my name. We are coming up next. And our discussion this morning, coming up next, will be on the extractive industry in this country. It's nascent, it has a huge future, but what do we need to do to tap into the extractive industry? Stay right here. This is BizCheck.
Thank you very much.
Great.